Eighth grade is often considered to be a formative year. It's a time of transition where experienced middle schoolers are preparing to become inexperienced high schoolers. They have climbed their way to the top of the school and they are relishing in that vantage point. I, however, was not an experienced middle schooler. And when I walked through those enormous doors on my first day, I was like a sheep sent to the slaughter. Okay, maybe that's a little extreme. Let me give you some context here. My name is Sarah, and I was homeschooled for the first 13 years of my life. I was raised in a religious, sheltered community. My dad was the associate pastor, and my mom taught Sunday school at the church that we attended. My only peers were cousins and children of families within that religious group. When my parents got divorced, that whole world crumbled around me, and I was hurtled into public school so that my mom could re-enter the workforce and provide for us kids. When I look back at that year, I really see it as the first time that I truly entered society. It was the beginning of finding myself outside of that strict indoctrination that I was raised in. And it was a whole new world, and a terrifying one at that. There were mean girls in designer clothes, mean boys hurtling insults dressed up as compliments across the hall. There were lockers that I couldn't open, and ultimately, lifelong lessons and friendships. The village of Walworth, Wisconsin is small. There were only about 150 kids enrolled in that middle school. But to a girl whose only classroom has ever been the four walls of her basement, and her only classmates were her brother and her sister, those bustling halls were overwhelming. I remember feeling sudden and intense inadequacy and insignificance among the throngs of my now peers. My peers who knew how to navigate this world. They walked through the halls with ease, and they could open their locker on the first try. On the first day, when the bell rang, the girl who was supposed to be helping me navigate my way to my first class abandoned me. I stood in the emptying hall, fumbling with the lock, turning it every way but the right one. I had never used a padlock before. I had never needed to. I didn't know the universal right, left, right sequence. Eventually, a teacher found me struggling with tears streaming down my face and helped me open my locker and got me to my first class. When teachers called on me in class, my body grew warm and sweaty and my pulse thundered in my ears. I didn't know the script for this place. I was terrified I would say something wrong. I was terrified that people would laugh at me. At lunch, I sat next to the girl who had abandoned me, and I struggled to follow their conversations that were thundering around me. I didn't understand their references. They were so loud, and I was still so quiet and shy. A couple weeks passed of lunches with me sitting next to them in awkward silence until finally one girl looked at me and asked, "Why do you even sit with us? You don't talk." After that, I sat alone until Maggie Lauterbach, now Dr. Maggie Kalinak, invited me to sit with her. I remember that day so vividly. The way Maggie and Hannah and Molly embraced me and my social awkwardness. Theirs was a judgment-free table. And it was the first time since my parents' divorce that I felt a sense of belonging. And it was also my first time interacting with people with vastly different backgrounds. Maggie was raised Lutheran. Molly and Hannah's parents were atheists. When they asked if I was religious, I just replied I didn't know. I didn't know what denomination, if any, I would claim at that point. And I will never forget the acceptance that they showered me in. I was free to be confused. We were all navigating adolescence together. I was free to be weird. We were all discovering who we were and how to express ourselves authentically. And I had never been granted that freedom before. Growing up, I was always told who I was, what I could do, how to behave in all facets of my life. And while it is important to teach children values and morals, it's equally as important to encourage them to speak and think freely, to express themselves loudly, and to never feel shame about who they are at their core. We became the choir and band and theater nerds. We were a group of misfits, belting show tunes down the halls and watching Jane Austen movies in our free time. I think it would have taken me a lot longer to find myself and my confidence if it hadn't been for those friendships. I know that my parents were doing what they thought was right. I know they did not intend to cause harm. Their intention, while misguided, in my opinion, was ultimately to protect me. But what they didn't understand was that raising me in such a sheltered home made it really difficult to assimilate into what you could consider the real world. Growing up with no voice in our home made it really hard to advocate for myself and others. 8th grade was a tumultuous time for me, but I'm ultimately very grateful. I'm grateful that my mom's decision to step out of the religious bubble changed the trajectory of my life. Despite my experience, I am considering homeschooling my 2 children. It's for vastly different reasons from my parents, and I'm still not sure if I'm actually going to do it. However, I do know that if I choose that route for my children, they will have a diverse social life. They will have their voices and opinions heard and validated. And most importantly, they will learn how to open a goddamn padlock. Thank you.